I'm nervous. I am. I'm nervous. So I will stutter and stammer a lot. I don't have a script. It's always easier when you do it with someone else's words. However, in question and answer sessions, because you ask the questions, gets the mind going, and perhaps maybe one can come up with a fairly intelligent answer. Feel absolutely free to ask any and all the questions you wish. I'm not so sure that you'll get an answer to all of them, but I'll try. Okay?
My name's Mark Jacobs. I wanted to ask you if there's some special technique you use for relaxation before you do a take.
Is there some special technique I use for relaxation before I do a take? I wish I knew it. I'd use it right this moment. I usually start off in the morning before I leave to go on location. I have my meditation session before I leave. And by the time I get to the set, I'm pretty well into wherever I want to be in order to perform that day. I have been told by my agent that he has had a number of complaints from actors that I go into a trance when I work. I thought that was ridiculous when I first heard it. However, on one of these question and answer sessions, I was asked by a student how they were able to get the sounds that I made in Sounder running down to meet my husband. And I thought it was a strange question, except that it made sense when I thought about it. He asked me if I was mic'd, and I said no. But I still couldn't understand. I couldn't remember how they got the sound. I went to the telephone and I called Marty Witt, and he said to me, "You were mic'd." Well, in order for one to be mic'd, they have to go up under your clothes and attach that mic to your body. And I couldn't remember anyone doing that to me. So I imagine that indeed, I think it was more deep concentration, because I do, once I get involved, concentrate very, very strongly, and that's probably what they meant. And I do that.
My name is Renee Aubrey. How does one get a script to a well-known actor without having to go through the agent? Or is that always necessary?
I'm afraid it is always necessary. Invariably, if it does come to me, it would still have to go to the agent. So I think it's always best to follow the procedure of getting it to the agent, who will then in turn read it, hopefully, and then get it on to the actor. Yes?
Therese Guillermo, did you have any difficulty, or in what manner did you approach portraying a character of someone who is alive? I'm referring to Coretta King.
Oh, did I have any difficulty in portraying Coretta King? I think it was the most difficult of any role that I've done so far. It's difficult in the sense that she is such a familiar figure. I mean, internationally known. And I was torn between how I would actually play her, whether I would try. I mean, there's a difference between playing a character and imitating. I think it's easy to imitate one. It's very difficult to play the character. I spent a great deal of time with her, and I find that's necessary as an actress, because I seem to absorb something from people. And what I discovered about her, to my amazement, was that she was basically a very human person. I mean, she was a woman with all of the frailties, with all of the emotions, incredible. And so I was fascinated with that. And what I wanted to show in my portrayal of her was the humanity. When we see Coretta King on television or in person, she seems so professional to me. That's the word. Everything about her seemed so studied. It was just wonderful for me to spend time with her at home and watch her kick off her shoes and curl up on the couch, or just reprimand her children just like my mother would do. I mean, it was just marvelous. Watch her putter around the kitchen, cooking, moving things about, answering the telephone. And then I realized that she was just another human being, and that was the quality which I wanted to project in my portrayal of her. Another question? Okay.
My name is Pat Tobin, and I'm interested in knowing what's it like to become a director. I understand that you're interested in becoming a director.
Okay, what is it like to become a director? Well, I don't know, because I'm not one. I had the opportunity of just putting my big toe in the water, so to speak. And it was an incredible experience for me. I see many familiar faces, those diehards that spent all those long hours here with me, including my little friend down here. God, it was fascinating, because I was totally ignorant of the other side of filmmaking. I had no idea of the mechanics of putting a film together. I would step in front of the camera, do what I had to do, and leave. I mean, once someone said to me, "Which side do you prefer to be shot on?" I said, "What do you mean, which side? I mean, this is my face and this is my face. What difference does it make?" I mean, but I was told that there are actors who had preferences in terms of which side was photographed. Well, when I'm thinking of a character, my concern is not how I'm going to look on the screen, but what I project. And that was the extent of my knowledge as far as the mechanics or the technicalities of putting a film together. My whole experience here at AFI was a powerful learning one. I learned what it is to look through the camera and see what it is that cinematographers and lighting men and directors get into heated arguments and sometimes fisticuffs about. I mean, I had no idea what it was that they were looking for when they looked through the camera. Dealing with actors and actresses, which I never thought that I could do in terms of bringing out an interpretation that I had in my head. And it was just, I had two marvelous women who just lit up like bulbs when I said something, and they were able to make it their own. And when I looked at the monitor, there it was. And all of the hundreds of actors and actresses who came every day from about 7 o'clock and stayed until 8 or 9 o'clock. I went over. I think we were allowed something like 4 days and 2 days grace. And I went over, and I found myself in a bit of a bind because I needed extras to complete what I was trying to show in that little piece that I was doing. And so I called everyone together one evening and I said, I have a problem and I need help, and how many of you will be able to come back the next day? And everybody raised their hands, and it just laid me low. I mean, I couldn't believe it. That, I mean, for absolutely nothing, here they were. That is something that I found absolutely wonderful. I don't know what my piece is going to be like. I haven't had an opportunity to edit it yet, which is something that I guess I've been putting off because I'm a little afraid of it. But I'm told that that's the most exciting part of directing, being able to put it together. That's left to be seen. I guess I'll get around to doing that within the next month or so. But it was a thrilling experience. I started out with 2 characters, by the way. It was a 2-character piece. I found that as I began to work on it and read it from day to day, that people kept popping up in my mind. It takes place in a cafeteria. It's between 2 older women who discuss their lives, past, present, and future. It's called Save Me a Place at Forest Lawn. And it, yes, and it sounds like a very kind of morbid thing, but I was interested in this tremendous humor in it, and that's what I worked for, and hopefully I got it. And that's left to be seen, as I said. Yes.
Hi, my name is
Hi.
Lynn Holmes, and I'd like to ask you, because our goal as actors and actresses is working, trying to get work. And do you have any suggestions, I mean, in terms of, other than like you have an agent, you're out there, do you think it's good to ask people that you know about work, or do you think that you should go around with your own pictures and do some of the things yourself? What do you suggest that one does?
I don't think that there is any foolproof pattern. You could be walking down the street and someone looks at you and says, "You're the one." I mean, it's just chance. If it is your profession, you do all the things that people suggest that you do. When I started in the business, anything that anyone told me to do, within reason, I tried. I mean, if someone came to me and said, "I just found the most remarkable teacher," I would go to that teacher. I found myself sometimes studying with 2 and 3 teachers at the same time. If I learned that that teacher was not for me, I learned something. So that I never let anything go by. I would make my daily rounds, take my pictures. One of the things that I was reluctant to do was to ask somebody. I was very shy about. I felt like it was an imposition on somebody to ask them to give me a job. So that I never did that. But I combed the show business and Variety and the Hollywood Reporter and called, made all of the rounds every day. And one day somebody said, "Hey, you're the face we're looking for." And that's what you wait for. Yes.
I'm Healthy Zero.
Yes, one of my dedicated ones.
Thank you. Listen, and I read someplace one time that you asked Sidney Poitier if you should give up acting because you were having difficulty getting work.
Yes.
And I'd like to know, have you ever thought of giving it up? And if so, what would you do?
You did read that article, didn't you? One night I was in a play off Broadway. It was called Trumpets of the Lord. It got incredible reviews, and it had, I guess, a 6-month run. And the night it closed was one of an experience that I won't ever forget. The audience was so moved that at the end of the performance, I mean, they joined the cast. They stood on the chairs. I can't ever remember this happening before. There were photographs of the cast all over the theater. People came up on the stage. One person came and physically picked me up and buried his head in my stomach, and he sobbed uncontrollably. And it took me I don't even remember how much time before I realized that it was my brother. That's right. He had not come to see me in a play, and I don't know, he must have been away, and then he came back. He stepped up on the stage, picked me up, and hugged me, and he was crying and shaking like a leaf. And then suddenly I realized it was my brother. But it was one of the most moving closing nights I've ever been through. And Sidney was there that night, and he took me out after the show, and I was so despondent. I said, "Sidney, I just think I'm going to give up this business. It seems just so futile. It's like rehearsing a play and going through opening night, to me, is like carrying a child. I mean, it's like carrying a baby, and then you give birth on opening night, and then the critics that I consider doctors either give you a stillborn or a live child." And And so I didn't know, I said, I don't know how much more of this I can go through, I said. And I just think that I'm going to give it up. And he looked at me for a long time and he said, and do what, Cicely? And do what? And I looked at him and I wondered myself what I would do. And I couldn't think of anything. And so I'm still here. Yeah.
Hi, Brandon Ortiz. I'd like to know what your plans are for the future.
My plans for the future. I try not to make plans for the future. However, because I find that whenever I make plans, they don't work out. I just let things happen, and I've been very fortunate. However, I do have a project which I was to start shooting next month, and it's been postponed until January because it's a tremendous undertaking, and they want a lot more time for pre-production. And it is a special for NBC. It's entitled A Woman Called Moses, and it's based on the life of Harriet Tubman, and that's my future plan. Okay, I'm very excited about that one. Yeah. Okay.
Kelly Barron, I'm so glad to see you.
Thank you.
This is a corny question. Your favorite film and why? One you appeared in, that is.
Oh dear. What is my favorite film and why? Every time I get asked that question, I think the person who asks me already knows the answer. You don't know. Well, it's a sort of an unfair question because I enjoy each one that I've done. I think the most gratifying one to date is Jane Pittman because of the tremendous range. I don't think that an actor and actress gets an opportunity to play a range like from 19 to 110 very often. No. And so it forces you to just pull on everything in your being. And that's what I was forced to do. I must say that when I was given that role, when I learned that it was mine, I was paralyzed for 4 days. I could not move. I could not eat. I could not get up. I couldn't sit down. I couldn't lie down. I could do nothing. I couldn't even think. And because I was overwhelmed with the responsibility. I thought that there was some part of it that I could do fairly well, okay, the first part of it. But I had no idea of how I was going to deal with the last part of her life. And the 5th day I woke up and I said, all right, my dear, it's yours. You had better do something. And so I decided, I picked up the phone and I called the producers and I said, I've got to get to work. And this is what I want to do. I've got to meet some old women. Where can I find them? And they took me to some old people's home here in Los Angeles. And I talked to 3 women. What was interesting about those 3 women, one was 105, one was 97, and one was 103. And each one of them lived pretty much the same period of life. Each one of them had a different interpretation of what it was like for them. And it wasn't so much what they said to me, but how they said it. You know, very often we have a tendency to say things and mean something entirely different. And it was how they said what they said that gave me what to work with, if you understand what I mean. I was so moved by the emotion in their voices. That's what gave me the juices to work on Jane Pittman. Because no matter what they said, I knew what they were feeling from what I was getting. And that is what I call, that's the joy of being an actor for me. That's what I call peripheral benefits, you know? Meeting people like that. One of those ladies is alive today still. She's, on May 26th, she'll be 107 years old. She's an incredible woman, and I talk to her all the time on the phone, and I visit her occasionally. She had an accident. She fell and broke her hip, so she's now confined to a wheelchair. But they had to operate on her. Imagine at 106, going through that kind of operation and surviving it. It's incredible.
Yes, Sandra Sharp. If I may touch on a slightly controversial subject, there's a feeling among many blacks in the industry that when a film is done about one of our people who is alive,
yes,
they do not take the same care and concern that they very often do with a white film about a person who is alive. And there was some small movement to try to get you not to play Mrs. Coretta Scott King because they felt there were actresses who looked more the part, and I wanted to find out what your personal feelings were about.
That's very interesting. Yes, I did hear that. The interesting thing about that is that about 2.5 years ago, when Abby Mann was about to put the piece together, I got a telephone call from my agent saying that Abby was putting the piece together and wondering if I would be interested in it. And I said, of course I would be interested, but I couldn't commit myself until I saw the script. From time to time, I would get a telephone call saying how the script was coming along. And I said, fine, when it's finished, send it to me. And when I read it, of course, I was, needless to say, very excited about the project, decided it was something that I wanted to do, and just did it. It was offered to me about 2.5 years ago when he was putting it together. So. I'm sorry. What can I say? I know that there were several, about 2 or 3. Now, I didn't hear this until I was already working on the project, about the feelings that other actresses had that they should certainly have had the role. And I would feel, no?
I'd like to clarify it just for your point, not as actresses, and that's why I was interested in your personal.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I only knew that there were actresses, and that's natural and that's normal. I mean, if I felt that I looked, but that doesn't have anything to do with casting. Looks has absolutely nothing to do with casting. At least I don't feel that way. I mean, I don't look a thing like Coretta King, but I don't know how many people have seen photographs of me as Coretta King. And it's the likeness. Did I hear somebody say, yeah? Did you see? What do you think about it?
It's astounding.
It's astounding. But see, I think the mind is an incredible instrument. And that with one's mind, you can make yourself anything you want to be. And all I did was think Coretta a lot. I spent a lot of time with her, and when I was portraying her, I thought nothing but Coretta King. I saw her constantly in my mind. And I did not try to imitate her, but I felt Coretta King. And I myself was astounded when I saw the photographs. I mean, there is one in which we are standing side by side, and it's very difficult to differentiate between myself and Coretta. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's either in this week's Newsweek or Time, that very photo that you're talking about. I think the fascinating thing about that particular physical aspect with regard to both you and Paul Winfield is that in both instances, what is captured is not an imitation of the person, but that spirit that you were going for. What the striking thing about that particular picture is that you have that same dignity that she has, that same look of being there professionally. And I think very often, depending upon the skill of the actor, when you're portraying someone who is alive or someone who is well known, if you capture that spirit that was so universally true of them, it doesn't matter what you look like.
I think that's the only thing one can go for, really, for truth, and that's what I went for.
How has your success affected your growth as an actress?
How has my success affected my growth as an actress? success means different things to different people. Because I personally feel that I am reaching for something. Now, if you were to ask me what that something is, I'm not sure that I could tell you. I don't feel that I have attained the kind of success that I would recognize as success. I hope you understand what I'm saying. What I want so desperately, I feel here in the pit of my gut. It isn't something that I could put into words. I only know it when I'm in the process of work and I feel a relief. I know that I have released whatever it is that I feel in my gut into a character. I feel it now, which means that that will go into Tubman, which I've already begun to research. And as long as I have that, I will be constantly reaching for what one calls success. And that's the only way I can answer that question.
Yes.
Okay? Yeah.
Mark Jacobs again. Coming from theater to film, what adjustment, if any, do you have to make for your technique?
That's an interesting question because I was discussing that very subject this afternoon. I'm glad that I came from stage to film. I think it was a lot easier. I think it's much more difficult to do the reverse. I work in film pretty much the way I worked on stage. I was discussing with Gene Wilder at luncheon this afternoon. That's right. Because I put my character together the same way, so that when I get ready to shoot, I have a whole person, and all I have to do on a particular day is when the director or whatever scene is being shot is to press. I call it push a button. You know, I push that button and I pull that scene out. But she's there in toto. It's easier to pull down than to broaden. And so when I started working in film, I was told that what I have to do is just hold on to the emotion but pull everything down. And it was much easier for me, since I am really a very introverted kind of personality. It was easier for me to pull it down. And that really was the basis of my adjustment. Yes?
Eileen Ramsey. I'm very fascinated not only by your work as an actress, but I'm also fascinated by you as an individual, because to me you seem to generate a particular kind of energy, a charisma. And I'd like to know if you have a particular philosophy about life and living that you could share with us.
Philosophy about life and about living. Yes, I do. However, I don't know that I can verbalize it. It might come out, but I'll get back to you. Yes.
Pat Tobin again.
Yeah.
While you're thinking about that, a long time ago, something else to think about. No, seriously, I read somewhere where, I guess as your career started out, you were typing or working as a secretary or something. You just got up from the typewriter one day and left the office. Could you kind of tell us a little bit about that? Long time, when you first started.
Okay, that's how I got involved in this business. I was working as a secretary to a psychologist in a social agency. And one day, I suppose I was typing up case history. I wish I could remember whose it was. But I suddenly became overwhelmed with the mechanics of banging on a typewriter. And I simply pushed myself away from the desk and I announced to the world, and whosoever will, that I was sure that God did not put me on the face of this earth to bang on a typewriter for the rest of my life. I mean, I had no idea what else there was for me to do, but I said, I don't know what else there is for me to do, but I'm going to find it. And I just said this, and it was a huge office. And so after I made this announcement or pronouncement or whatever, I pulled myself back to the typewriter and proceeded to finish whatever it was. And I realized that mine was the only machine going. And I looked up, and there everyone was sitting looking at me as if I had flipped out. And I suppose I had temporarily, but I could not believe that this was all I was put on the face of this earth for. So about 2 weeks after that, my hairdresser was having a hairstyle show, and he asked me to be one of his models. And that led to a modeling career. And getting back to you, I was out, I was so insecure about this whole thing that I held on to my typing job, you see, while I took my lunch hours to go out and scout out modeling jobs, you see. And I was in a fashion editor's office one day looking for a modeling job when an actress who had been up for the role of a mother in a film stopped me as I was leaving and said, I want you to go see a man about the ingenue lead in a film I just went up for. And I said, I can't go. I said, I don't know anything about acting, and I'm not going to go and make a fool of myself. So I went back to the office, and the fashion editor then called me. And she called me twice. Each time I hung up, and I said, I can't do it. Finally, she said, why don't you just go over and say hello to the man, which I did. I went over, I said hello to him. It was an actor whose name was Warren Coleman, and he at that time was busy putting together a film for the black market. And, I mean, black market, not... Gotta clear things up. And he handed me what I now know was a script. And he said, I'm going to read this part, the male part, and I want you to read the female part. And I suppose instinctively I did the right thing, because I had no idea what I was doing. And I think that's what talent is, by the way, when one instinctively does the right thing. So I read the script, and he said, thank you, and I left. I went back to my job. I didn't think any more of it. About 2 months later, he called me and he said, how would you like to do a movie? That's how it all started. However, I realized after we did the first few scenes before they ran out of money, and people were telling me how talented I was. I had no idea what they were talking about. A year later, they raised money to do another film, and they came back to me, and I said, no, thank you. I don't want to do it. I don't know what it's all about, and I'm not going to do something that I don't understand. For me to be able to do something, I have to, it's a typical Sagittarian trait, I'm told. I have to dig into the core, right? So they decided to send me to school, and that's how I first started studying. I started studying before I ventured into making the other film.
Yeah, Patricia Gall. Yeah. It seems like it would take a long time then for you to prepare a role. I mean, if you like to get so deep. Lots of times, you know, on television and films, they don't give you that time. Yeah. Have you come up against that? And if so, what have you done?
When I was doing a television series, East Side, West Side, I found that to be true. But I had a very small role in that series, if any of you remember that. So that it wasn't too difficult for me to just go home and prepare whatever it was that I had to do. I have guest starred in television series where within the space of a week one had to prepare what would be considered a starring role. I just spend all the time I could possibly spend on it, that's all. It's all consuming with me, which is probably not very healthy, but I get so completely involved in it. I just don't let up until I'm through shooting. I give it all of my efforts, time, energies go into that role that I'm preparing. I don't do anything else whenever I'm working on a role.
What if you feel that you're not ready to start? Has that happened? I mean, is there a moment like before the camera?
I don't think that one can afford that luxury in this business. When you look at the cost of filmmaking, I don't think that that's a luxury one can afford. If you're hired for a job and within a given period of time you are supposed to be ready for that job, you make yourself as ready as you possibly can under the circumstances. Otherwise you'll be out of a job. Yes.
Hi, Cicely. I'm new to California, and in being here I find that there are a lot of film acting schools with a lot of film acting techniques. Tell me, in working on a script and working out of context sometimes on a role, do you, within the scene, work and make specific choices, and within the context of that segment, play an action or have a goal?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Leave a comment. Do you have, like every actor or actress, a special role that you would like to play?
Do I have a special role that I would like to play?
Yeah, character or something.
Yes, but I don't talk about special roles that I would like to play.
No.
I made the mistake of doing that once, and another actress took it and ran like a thief. And I try to learn from all of my experiences, especially the negative ones. So I don't reveal any roles that I would like to play in the future. Yes? Okay, I'll be with you. Yes.
Jeff Brown, I just wanted to ask, obviously you're very involved with your work and you've done some beautiful work. Your comments already been made. Do you think, once you've done the preparation, you're about to go before the camera, once you're working, is acting to you hard work?
It's very difficult until I get started. Once I get started, I don't think about another thing. So, and I do enough homework so that it's smooth sailing once I've never had to do a take more than 3 times myself. And the takes that surprisingly enough to me that people are taken with are the ones that I do maybe just one of. That scene that everybody talks about in Sounded, that meeting scene, was shot once. When we were through with it, Marty Ritt came over to me and he said, very apologetically, he said, I know we have it, but John Alonzo, who was the cinematographer, he asked that we do it again. The reason being that he was so moved by the moment that he began to cry while he was shooting, and he wasn't sure that he got what he saw through the tears. So we shot it twice. The walk that everybody talks about in Jane Pittman was shot once. And I'm the kind of person, I never see rushes. I can't look at any of that stuff. And I make it a point when I start to work to tell everybody, I don't care what you see. I don't care whether it's good or bad. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. The reason being is when I start to work, I'm moving this way. And my whole feeling is that I cannot go back and undo what I've done the night before. If it's good, fine. If it's not, then I can't deal with it. But if it's not good, it stays on my mind, and I can't concentrate on what I have to do. It drives me crazy. So I said, I don't want to know anything, good, bad, or indifferent, keep it to yourself. Well, the day after that scene, the walk was done, the set was like this, and I knew that something had gone on, and I simply said, don't tell me whatever it is, keep it to yourself. Well, when we were through, when the film was finished, everybody was talking about the walk. I didn't know what they were talking about. I had no idea. The walk, I said, what walk are you talking about? The walk to the fountain. I couldn't understand what was so special about the walk to the fountain. I simply walked to the fountain. Well, I finally saw it when they previewed it before it was shown on television, and I, coward that I am, I went to the projection room and I watched it from the projection room. And by that time, I was divorced enough from having played the role so that I could be very objective about what I saw. And I must say, when it was over, I simply looked at Jane and I said, I like that lady. I really did like her. So then I understood what they were talking about. Joy and sorrow. One of the things that fascinates me is that when people talk to me sometimes, they say, oh, you know, when I see your movies, you know, I cry so much, I cry. One of the things about the moments that cause you to, or people to shed the tears are moments of absolute joy. The moment in Sounder when most people cried was the highest point of joy in the film. It was the reunion of that whole family after so many years of not being together. The moment of joy with Jane is exactly the same. I mean, the tears is exactly the same. The whole idea of this woman at 110 daring to make this move, walking to that fountain to drink that water, was a high point of achievement in her life, and she spoke for all of humanity, and that's sheer joy. Yet tears are tears of sadness. There are also tears of joy. Okay, I just wanted to make that clear. The people who are instrumental in making my instrument as rich as it is, I would dare say first is my mother. You know, yes, my mother, who, when I told her I was going to become an actress, asked me to move out of her apartment. My mother, bless her. First, you have to understand my mother. My mother was a very strict woman, and she felt that the best place for her children to grow up was in the church. And consequently, we spent from Sunday morning until Saturday night in church. I vowed, if I ever lived to become an adult, that I would never go to church. However, after some years of abstinence, I have returned to the church. And she felt that I was going into a den of iniquity. I was going to live a life of sin, or whatever it was she thought I was. However, when she told me to leave, I left. And I didn't see her for about 2 years, and I didn't talk to her for about a year. A year after not seeing her and not talking to her, I called her on the telephone, and I spoke with her. I wanted it that badly. I think that's one of the things about acting. I really wanted it that bad. I knew it was something that I wanted badly enough, so that it didn't matter to me what anyone said. I was going after it. I mean, and that's what it is. I mean, if it doesn't matter whether it's acting or anything else, you know in your gut that is what is going to be your salvation in this life, or it's going to be a way for you to make a contribution to this life. And nothing will stop you. Nothing. And the fact that she said, you have to move, I just packed my pocketbook and I left. And she said, no, she said, and you can't take my clothes, meaning the clothes that she worked for to give me. You can't take my clothes, and you can't take anything out of here that I worked for. So I put whatever I had in my pocketbook. I don't even remember what it was. And I went and I stayed at a girlfriend's house. But I was determined, see. I was determined that she would be proven wrong. See? And that was an incentive. See, you never know what motivates people, right? And that was an incentive. That was the basic. I was determined that she was going to be wrong. And I fought like a tiger. And one of the things that I'm very grateful for is that she lived long enough to see what one considers success, my success in the business. And I was fortunate enough to hear her say, "I'm very proud of you," before she left. I no longer have her, but I was very lucky in that sense. And then I had a teacher who is now a director. Her name is Vinette Carroll. And she somehow or another saw something in me. And she said to me one day, as she looked at me, she said, "You have it, and you are going to be a big star one day." And all I wanted to do was to act. And at that time, I was running around to every little off-Broadway show. I would do a little bit here and a little bit there, an extra there on TV, an extra in a movie, everything. I mean, sometimes I did 5 and 6 different shows in the course of one day. Change a wig, change an outfit, run from one show to the other. I mean, that's the way I was. And she said to me, "You have it. You have the drive and you have the talent, and you're going to do it one day." And she was the first one that came to me after seeing Jane Pittman. She came to me and she said, "Cicely, how did you have the nerve?" She said, "Listen to this." I could have killed her. "How did you have the nerve to play a role without all the glamorous makeup, without all the fabulous clothes, without all the... Where did you get the nerve to do that?" she said. I looked at her. I said, "How dare you ask me that question? You're the one that told me you can't make it on beauty alone. You have to perfect your craft." And then she looked at me and she said, "And you remembered." And I owe a lot to her, Vinette Carroll. She was my teacher. And from her, I learned a lot. And I mean, sometimes it was very difficult. I went off crying. Once I went up for a role, a little tiny bit in a movie. And I didn't get it, I thought. And I went back. I was in tears. She looked at me and she said, "Well, that's what's wrong with you pretty girls. You think you can make it on your looks." I was devastated because I never thought of myself as being pretty in the first place. That was number one. And for her to tell me that, after instilling in me the fact that I had to work, and I was working so hard. And she looked at me and she said, "Well, that's what you get. You know, you're not working, you're not studying. That's what you get. You can't make it on beauty alone." 2 weeks later, I got the telephone call that I had the role. I didn't even call her. I ran to her studio and I said, "I got it. You were wrong." They just weren't ready to tell me, you know? But she was hard. She was hard. But that's what you need, a firm hand and somebody who really believes and can see it and nurtures it. And I was lucky enough to have that. Yes.
What were you working on when you did the commercial that you have running with television now?
What was I working on?
Commercial. I don't even remember the television
Color
company.
Traffic.
I remember you. And I see you all the time.
Yeah.
And you say, "This is this." Your hair was beautiful.
Thank you.
But what were you working on? Because do you remember what you were working on?
Because what?
Well,
Because it...
I felt that you were talking to me as a man.
I would hope so. I'll tell you about that commercial. My agents would not let me do a commercial. I've been with them for about 12 years. They absolutely refused to let me do a commercial. I felt that I was being cheated because I felt as an actress I should be able to do everything at least one time, just to have the experience of doing it. And I got a telephone call from my business manager, and he said, "You know, I have a commercial for you. I want you to do this commercial." And I said, "The agency won't let me do it." He said, "Well, I'll talk to them," which he did. And to make a long story short, it was a class commercial and that I could do it. So I did it. I want to tell you something. Doing commercials, all of the actors and actresses who do commercials should be highly commended because it is the most difficult thing I find to do. I mean, have any of you done commercials? Yes, all right. So it's a totally different technique, totally different. I worked from 8 o'clock that morning till almost 8 o'clock that evening. So what you see on that commercial, I mean, wasn't just, it was very difficult for me. But I enjoyed it because I learned something new. And I think what I used was the fact that I knew that I would be talking. Hopefully I would be talking to millions of people. You and you and you and you and you and you and you. And that's how I dealt with it. Yes, go ahead.
Coretta Mason, most of the projects you've been involved with thus far that I'm aware of have been serious dramas and very worthwhile pieces. Can we look forward to seeing you in a comedy? And do you want to do one?
Okay.
Because you're so bright and alive, and I just would think that you'd be doing them a lot more.
Most of the work that I've done has been in a serious vein. One of the first awards I won was for a comedy. It was a play that I did in New York entitled Moon on a Rainbow Shore. I think what has happened is that because I came to the attention of most people through drama, like Sounder, nobody really thinks of me as being able to do comedy. I think I went through a period primarily because of the kinds of films that were being done about 5 or 6 years ago, when I felt that it was something that I did not care to be a part of, that if I did any feature films at all, they would have to be films that projected black women in a light that was not degrading. I made the choice to stay away from all other roles except roles that projected women and then black women particularly in a positive light. I mean, I was concerned that we were not being dealt with as human beings, and so it was very important for me, just if for no other reason, to be at peace with myself, to wait until not even ever knowing whether or not a role would come along that I would be able to do. As a matter of fact, I felt that I had not done a movie since The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. And I thought that that I'd never be able to do another film from the types of films that were being done. And consequently, I suppose it was a choice that I made very consciously. I didn't feel that I could afford the luxury of doing anything other than serious roles and roles that were positive. Also, I felt that I had a trilogy to do. I thought one was Sounder, the other one was Jane Pittman, I think the third one is Tubman. And then I think that I can relax and look for lighter things to do. I think as an actress, one should be able to play any type role. I just did not feel that I could afford the luxury of doing that then. I feel that perhaps now I can.
You know, I want to say, the part you played in Roots was an Oscar performance. You know, but you know something? Yeah. I was annoyed because it was a small part, but it was so fantastic. You know. But then I like to ask. Now, when you took this role, did you think in terms of being a tiny bit, and what was your feeling? And secondly, do people now send the script to you, not ask you to come in and talk to them or anything? Your agents or business persons do all of this for you, yes?
Yes. Yes. Oh. Yes to the latter part of the question. About the role in Roots. David Wolper, who was the producer of Roots, and I were going to do a project a couple of years ago. It was a project that I had been committed to by my agent. He felt it was something that I could make a lot of money doing, and so he committed me to it. when I returned, I asked for the script, I read it, and I decided it was something that I could not do. So it created a bit of a problem, needless to say. What happened was that Walter came to visit me, told me what his feelings were. I told him what my feelings were, which was that I could not do the project. He agreed to try to find someone else to replace me, and he was able to do that. When he did, I called him and I apologized for any inconvenience that I caused him, and I promised him that if in the future he had something where I could be of some assistance, that I would do so. So, when he was getting ready to do Roots, he gave me a call. He said, "You promised." I said, "All right, I must see the script, however." And of course, after I read it, there was no question. I wanted to play Binta because I thought that she was very important. And he later, Alex Haley, said that if Cicely Tyson did not give birth to Kunta Kinte, he would have been considered a bastard child. So I was very pleased, needless to say, to be associated with that project, and I was not concerned about the size of the part at all, not at all.
What were your feelings like when you realized that you were a famous celebrity?
You're not going to believe this. But I want to tell you something. I am still astounded when people recognize me in the street. I walk around looking like God knows what sometimes, and through the mask, I'm still recognized. I think, you know, I think if one really is aware, I mean really aware of that, it is so overwhelming, it can become immobilizing. And I would rather not be that aware. So I think subconsciously I kind of deal with it over here, rather than.
Hi, I'm Vera Stowe. I remember you in Moon on a Rainbow Show.
Oh my heavens!
I also remember you not bringing down, but taking over the house in one line in the Blacks, which still stays with me. You know, so I'd like to see you do comedy too. I wanted to ask you. Obviously, you've answered part of my question because you obviously were continuing to study when you were making rounds in New York and working and all of that. How long did you continue to study, and do you, if and when you are between roles, do you do any acting things now? Kind of deal with that.
Yes, yes I do. Did everyone hear the question? Yeah. Okay, do I continue to study? One of the things that we as actors tend to do when we achieve a certain amount of recognition and or success is to forget about studying. One of the most important things, I think, is to remember that the only instrument we have is this being. I mean, is our sense of smell, taste, hearing, sight, feeling. That's all we have. Those are the notes that we use to play on. That's all we have. We don't have a piano or a horn so that we can pick it up and practice. And as far as I'm concerned, the only way to practice is to go back to the primaries, which is what I do every now and then. I do it now. I go back to the beginner's class and I study, you know, try to sensitize those five senses, those five keys that we have. I think it's very important. When you go so far, you are so removed from the basics, which is the core of what we use to convey or to portray, that it gets thin. It's like stretching a rubber band, and the thinner it gets, the more transparent it becomes. If you stay with the core, you always will have substance. And so I continue to study. Yes?
Yeah. I'm Sherry Snyder. You have a phenomenal consuming drive, which I understand and admire, but that does make for a lot of problems and sacrifices in your personal life, and I was wondering how you have handled that over the years.
It has not been easy. The first break came with my mother, needless to say. I think people are different, yes? When I'm working on something, it has to be complete. It's 100% with me. I have learned that I cannot give my best to more than one thing at a time. That's the way I function. It has to be 100% for me. I had, needless to say, a relationship which I was very involved. I was told at one point that I thought more about my career than I did my relationship. At that point in my career, I was much more interested in establishing a relationship with my mate, and so I gave up my career for 2 years. For 2 years, I dedicated myself to building a relationship, after which time he began to feel very guilty because people were saying, why are you doing that to her? You should, I mean, it's a very selfish thing. You should really let her work. You know, it's something that should be shared and you're stifling it. And so I began to work and try to maintain a relationship at the same time. It didn't work because he was a musician and he was in one part of the world and I was in another part, and that's no way to build a relationship. And so it finally broke. And I was fortunate enough, after being out of the business for about 2 years, to be able to pick up almost where I left off and carry on. And so until I am able to get a complete relief, which I doubt very seriously will ever happen, from this, then I think that this is my life until it ends.
I want to ask a further point. You have answered my question, but I'm talking in terms of a woman, being a woman, because it's very hard in today's society to have that kind of career drive and not be thought a real freak about it. You know?
Oh, nobody's ever called me a freak. I think, you see...
I mean, have you found that people around you tend to treat you differently, or do you find they're accommodating to that?
If people that surround me have any feelings about the drive, pardon me, I'm not aware of it. It's not, it certainly has not been brought to my attention in a negative way, so that I don't have any unpleasant feelings about it. I have very definite feelings about being a person first. That's what I am first. I'm a human being first, with all of the aspects that go into being a human being. I deal with that first. I don't think that my drive is any different from another human being, regardless of whether it be male or female. You see, I am motivated by an inner force, as another human being would be. And the fact that I'm a woman is not something that I am obsessed with. I deal with myself first as a human being.
I'm interested in a little bit more about the preparation that you do on the role. I don't have a specific role in mind, but if you could talk a little bit about in Pittman, or some of the ways you glean things from the world around you to bring to your...
Well, one of the things that I have difficulty talking about is something that I've done. So it's because it's past. It's with me at the time I'm working on it. But once I'm finished, I tend to let it go. I can deal with what I'm working on now. I just started doing research on Tubman, and I spent about 4 or 5 days of this past week visiting the home where she last lived in Auburn, in New York, and meeting descendants of her family. I don't know how I can talk about that. I really can't. See, I think that if I'm not very verbal about a lot of things. You might find that difficult to do, but I'm not. And I think that if I were, I could write, and I can't write. So that I put whatever emotions that I feel into my acting. And I think that if I were able to explain what I feel verbally, that I might not be an actress.
I'm also from stage background, and I find the film work that I've done, it's been very hard for me compared to the stage work that I've done where you're actually involved in a world. To me, my concentration is, it's like a private thing. Whereas I find in the film work that you have to work a little differently to create that private world. I don't feel I've been able to do that.
But I don't work any differently. I work exactly the same way in creating a character for film as I would for the stage. So that by the time I get on the set, I have her. She's a whole person. She's not in sections as we shoot film. She's whole. I know every aspect of her character. So that when the director says to me, tomorrow we're going to shoot the tree scene in Pittman, I just go right there. The dialogue just comes. I know who she is. I know her. I feel that woman so strong that I am that woman. The moment I get all of that, the makeup and the costuming, everything, by the time that's finished and I sit in that chair, that's that character. I don't know. I don't know of any other way to work. That's the way I work, and I don't know how anybody. I imagine people who have been trained in the film world first have a technique for working specifically for film. I find it works better for me to have that person. I can't do it in sections. It's not whole. It's not complete. It's not full for me. You follow? Yes.
When you're preparing, how much do you lock yourself in terms of an action? For example, do you say at this point I want to cry or I want to move over here, or do you just let whatever happens when you get on?
No, I think if you believe, one of the key things in acting and truth is that you must believe what you're doing. I mean, if at a given moment you feel you are dying, you must believe that. I think that's half the battle. You must believe each moment, moment by moment. I play each moment as it comes. It's not possible to set up 5 minutes ahead what your reaction is going to be to somebody, because you don't know what that actor might decide to give you in a given set of circumstances. And I think the most important thing is that you have to be free to take what it is that he's giving you and let the juices flow. Yeah.
My name is Tobin, and I'd like to know, do you have any advice that you give to children then who's different from
You mean someone who aspires to be an actress? Do you want to be an actress? Yes. Why?
I'm very dramatic around the house.
Who's dramatic? You? Are you dramatic? I see. Huh? Why?
I think it'd be a lot of fun if I could get in front of the camera and do it professionally.
You do, huh? That is so deceptive, I want to tell you, my dear. Whenever I'm asked that question, I always say that I would never discourage anyone who wants to be an actress or actor, but I would never encourage you either. I think, as I said earlier, you have to really want it. The sacrifices are tremendous. I mean, when you are able to take one rejection after the other, day after day, week after week, month after month, and even in some instances, year. Hey, you have to really want it. And how old are you? At 12 years old, you know that you want to be an actress. Good for you. Good for you. If at 12 years old, you know that you want to be an actress, my concern is your reasons. If you think that it's fun, I'm here to tell you it isn't. It is not fun. It's a lot of very, very difficult, hard work. Serious work.
I decided that I really want to do it now. Give up anything and do it.
All right. You'll be an actress. Yes.
Jackie, I've got 2 questions to ask you. How did you handle rejection day after day, year after year?
Okay, how did I handle the rejections day after day after day? Well, I tell you, I wish I could remember. There's a poem that Langston Hughes wrote that's entitled, "Life for Me Ain't Been No Crystal Stairs." I locked myself in my room and I cried a lot in many instances. Oh yeah. And then my mother had a way of saying, what's for you, you'll get. What's not for you, you will never get. And I learned when I went for roles that I didn't get, I was able to say very quickly, that wasn't for you. And I could move on. I wasn't paralyzed. I was able to think, to plan, to continue to study, to continue to make the rounds. It was the thing that kept me in the business. It was the thing that allowed me to hold on. Whenever I didn't get it, okay, that wasn't mine. I'll wait. And that really was my saving grace. Because I mean, you can't cry like that too many times. And when you want something desperately, and you work so hard, and you lose it, it's not easy. You better have something to hold on to. And that's really what did it for me. Did you have, yes?
Have you ever done a role that in the middle of it you discover you really don't like the person you're playing? How do you handle that? Has it ever happened to you?
No, no, I've never had that experience. The reason why I've not had that experience, I believe, is that I have a guideline for choosing. I try to read everything that comes my way. And in the process of reading a script, one of 2 things happen. Either my skin tingles or my stomach churns. And when my stomach churns, I know that I could never do it. I came very close once to doing a role in a film that I did not want to do because I was broke. Okay? That usually is not the criteria. It happened to be a director that I admired and respected a lot, and I wanted desperately to work with him. I came pretty close to doing a play with him, and it didn't work out. And I wanted to do this film. I read it. It wasn't a role that I was crazy about, and I certainly did not like the film. But I thought that I could grin and bear it, right? The night before I was to go and have my second interview with him, I sat up and I read the entire script onto a tape. And the next morning I woke up and I played it. And as I listened to it, I got sicker and sicker. And I said, I couldn't do it. And I simply called him and told him I was sorry that I couldn't do it. So that I go through those feelings before I make the choice, so that I've not had that happen to me. Yes?
Are you saying that you would not take a role then where the character was not made to your personal liking? In other words, a role, a lead, where the woman is not a likable person.
Oh no, that's not what I'm saying at all.
See, I'm asking for a reason, because you said before when you do a role, you get completely immersed in it and you are that person.
Yes.
And you would have to be that person
Right.
for quite a length of time. Therefore, it would be, I would assume, more difficult if you were taking a role where you did not like who you have become and have to live with that during the course of.
No, once I make the choice to do the role, there's something about it that I would have to find absolutely attractive or a challenge. Yes, yes. Oh, sure. I think if I thought that it would be something that would expand me as an actress, I mean, where I would, if it's a role that would stretch me, that would give me something to do that I ordinarily would not even conceive of doing. It's mine. Okay.
Yeah. I was wondering if you ever find yourself becoming, on an intellectual basis, as yourself, in a position of conflict with regard to something that a character that you're portraying does. I'm thinking specifically in terms of Sounder as opposed to Portia. The character of Portia fascinated me immediately because she was a fighter.
Yes.
And she was not going to take any prejudicial bigotry, even though she got screwed anyway. As opposed to her, the portrayal you gave in Sounder was a woman who had so much to be angry about, so much to kill a lot of people for, though she would not do so. Did you find yourself, as yourself, becoming angry, and how did you reconcile yourself to doing it?
I want to tell you something. Yes. Angry, yes. But you use those emotions, especially with Rebecca. A lot of it had to be suppressed. But that's what made her work. Do you follow what I'm saying? It was all of those emotions that I was feeling that made you know that this woman was sitting on almost a keg of dynamite. Somebody once asked me, a student said, why, when you went to see your husband in jail and they said that you couldn't see, why didn't you get angry and, and lash out or fight or... The simple thing is, the reality of that situation was that I could not allow myself the luxury of giving vent to the emotion I was feeling at that time, because it could cost my husband his life, me my life, and then I had 3 children at home that I had to consider. So I could not be that selfish and indulge. I mean, it would have been sheer indulgence for me to allow that kind of outburst. I couldn't. And so it made, I think about it now, you see, and it's, well, so I think I've answered the question.
Going.
Of course.
Kill the
It's almost inhuman for anybody to have to abide that.
Yeah.
Right?
When you find yourself in person, would you get angry at something that you felt was an injustice?
I become violently angry at injustices. I cannot bear them. How I express them is another thing. I cannot bear inhumane treatment. I can't deal with it at all. But I do try to follow the golden rule. I think that if each person would deal with the next person as he would like to be dealt with. Okay? Tonight, I'm delighted that I came. I'm even more delighted that you came. I want you to know that I got just as much as you got out of it, I hope, if not more. Thanks again.